Hello, everyone. Today is March 25th, 2020. This is our state reporting update. Primarily, we're going to focus on student record, but we're also going to discuss student class for end-of-year reporting a little bit as well. So some of this will be handheld through the process. Some of it will be overview. If you have any questions, you guys know how to get in touch with us. Just let us know, drop a ticket, and our team can assist. All right, let's get started here. So under Georgia State reporting, student record extracts, we have several things to report. One, let's go ahead and start with the system level data. System level data is one of those things that there is a data entry screen for. So under the system level data entry, as you click there, it does pertain to all of the information for the school year that you have selected at top. So all of the information that you need to report to DOE for system level reporting can be entered on this screen. Click Save up at the top when you're done. This is not any information that collects over from anything in campus. This would be all of the information that you enter. For those of you that have our SWARM, our social worker tool, there are certain elements that populate from the social work data into the system and school level, but each of you should know about that from your SWARM training. So for the system level process, again, enter it, save it, system level extract, and upload it. System level data does not go in the auto FTP process at night. So if you change any data, this is something that you don't have to submit very often, but you do submit this one manually. Under system level, go through, you really don't have to pick everything, but just go ahead and pick every school there, state format as it shows at the bottom, click download file, you will get your data. Next would be the school level data. Under school level processes, there is an update feature that allows you to pull over your behavior totals from your school data into your totals to report for school level reporting. So remember to run that to update your behavior data. Also, again, for those of you that do use our SWARM tool, there is a feature there available for you as well. Under school level data entry, after having run the update table process, you can go through and adjust any information that you need to. All of your, what are they called? USCO behavior codes, if set in campus with the appropriate federal event code, will automatically populate for you in here based on the data in your school after having run the update table process. So again, up there at the top where it says update behavior numbers, you can grab that and pull that in anytime as well, or you can run the update table and it will go through and do it for you as just like this process will. So however you need to do that. Get your data set as you need, save it, school level, extract, upload it to DOE. Those two are pretty straightforward. Now, one thing about the data entry screen up at the top where you have the information about the Title I school code, that can come from your school record in campus under sysadmin resources schools, and it will populate over for you as well as the free reduced provision, special provision status. So if those values change after having updated your data, that's due to the way your school's set up. You can change it back here, or you can adjust it under sysadmin resources school. However you choose to do that, just make sure you refresh the data and report it correctly. All right, let's go ahead and dive into the student level. Student enrollment, special ed program safety would be the others that we send up. Student extract, notice there that there is no data entry screen or anything of that variety. That comes from data that exists in Infinite Campus there for you. So there is nothing to change or alter or modify before you upload. Pick which calendars. You'll notice we've made changes to the extract screens where we're only showing you the calendars for the school year you have selected at top in an effort to, one, make it easier to select just the calendars you're looking for, and two, not accidentally send up a wrong year's calendar that has been done on every extract screen: Hope, student record, FTE, student class, everything that pertains there. At the bottom here, exclude students missing GTID. If you send up more than 10 students in a file that don't have a GTID, you will get errors at the DOE level. I believe it says something like file validation failed. Exclude those kids that don't yet have GTIDs in an effort to prevent you from getting a validation failure on upload. If you ever want to go through and review your data in Excel or CSV format, you do have the ability on all of our extracts to choose the CSV format. That will allow you to open them in Excel and see the data with column headers in columnar format rather than in fixed width format like the state format TXT is set to do. So anytime you're uploading to DOE, make sure you utilize the state format. If you want to review it for your own purposes, you have the ability to use CSV and, again, get the data in columnar format so that you can easily see with column headers. We'll talk more in a little bit about where data comes from for the student extract, enrollment extract, etc. But just keep in mind here, we're going through how to run each of these extracts. Enrollment extract, same process. Choose which schools. You have the ability to exclude those missing GTIDs, and you also have the ability to choose your format. All right, program level, exact same thing. We'll go through where that data comes from here in a moment. Special education processes, I want to talk about it a little bit before we get started, as there are a few things that pertain here. One, if you are a Go IEP district, we have built and deployed a Go IEP SR import tool that allows you to pull the data into our tabs in Infinite Campus to utilize the same reports. If you are an ETCH district, all of our error checks, things of that variety, that import tool allows you to take the GO1, the special ed format, from Go IEP. There is an extract from Go IEP that you can run the student record extract and import it to campus so that you can see the data, do your ETCH error checks, additional reporting from Infinite Campus. If you are a Go district, make sure you do not report from both systems. Actually, I'm going to rephrase that and say, if you are a Go IEP district, report student record from Go IEP, not from Infinite Campus. This student record import tool was built so that you can get data into campus for other folks to see, for review, for ETCH, for other purposes. It was not intended for you to report to DOE via campus. Data in campus is not automatically updated from Go, so there is a lag time there, and it only updates when you run this import tool. So again, I encourage you, if you are a Go IEP district, to report student record special ed level from Go IEP and Go IEP only. All right, below that, there's a special ed extract from SR event dates. That would be where we store our information in campus. So that information would be, if you are a campus IEP district, you would report from here after having populated your IEPs, and the process is run to update the special ed SR event dates, SPED SR event dates tab that we'll get to in a little bit. All right, notice up at the top here, we're going to start with some district level information to help you with reporting. So up at the top, it says we only report dates that fall within the range as configured on the system administration, resources, district information. So before you start reporting, go to sysadmin, resources, district information, click your district name. As we scroll somewhere to the middle of the screen here, we see report special ed dates after and report special ed dates before. Many times, due to the records recovery process, due to transfer students, things of that nature, you have to expand your special ed dates beyond just this current fiscal year. So you may want to run it back 2 years, you may want to run it back a year and a half. It's up to you, but remember that our extract is controlled solely by these dates here, as to which dates that we're going to report to DOE. So if you have a kid that has an initial eligibility in, say, 2015, based on Alicia's example here, it will not report because it happened before 1/1/2016. So if you get errors at the DOE level that pertain to event dates that have not been reported, you may have to back your dates up where it says report special ed dates after. I would not report special ed dates that happen after June 30th, 2020. So notice there in the report special ed dates before, that should normally be limited to the end of June of the current fiscal year, so 6/30/2020. Anything beyond that, it is a future year situation. But the report special ed dates after, again, you may need to back up accordingly and get some additional years worth of data in there. All right, Alicia.
Also, I was going to also say that many times when you're having to back these dates up, it may be because you have a student that transfers into your district from another state with an initial IEP way in the past that you have accepted. Many times you will find once you upload that file, those records will be in the special ed records recovery area. So don't forget to go and look there before you assume that there's an issue, because it will show as an error. But if you go into records recovery, you can pull those records out and they will stay as part of your data being reported without having to upload again. So if you do need to back this up a long ways, I mean, I've seen districts have to back up 5 or 6 years. You can upload, get those out of records recovery, and then reset this to a more manageable time so that you don't have so much data in the records recovery area to go and get, dig through.
All right, now let's talk about where we get our data from. So some information is under census. Obviously, all of the student demographic data is going to be under census people. When you look up a student, remember that we have situations where we have legal last name and things of that variety. Remember, in census, we have the protected identity information. So as we scroll down here, we see all the information about the student. To clarify something here, Alicia, scroll back up just a wee bit. Date entered U.S. school is the field that we utilize for that reporting. Date entered U.S. doesn't really mean anything to us. Date entered U.S. school. The other thing is birthplace that you see at the bottom. The 4-digit numeric code is what goes to DOE for the birthplace. If it's not a 2310 or 1790, I think, we have to report a student primary language. 1790, I believe, is Puerto Rico. Yep. So 2310 or 1790, we have to report a student home primary language. So remember, that is set here. And we also now report a parent language. The parent language is based on the relationship to the student. Any one person flagged as guardian, we look at that person's demographic record and report the home primary language for that particular individual as set here for the home primary language. A safe thing to do in any situation where you are unsure, obviously the 08 Standard American English, if you have a child born outside the United States at, say, one of the military bases or something of that variety, set that as 08 English Standard American. We report things accordingly. Birth country may be Germany. Home primary language is going to be 08 English Standard American. Everything goes through, flushes out at DOE when we do that. So just keep that in mind for those kids that might be born outside of the country. Anything to add here, Alicia?
The only thing I was going to mention, as Brock said, the date entered U.S. school is the only one of these date fields that we utilize. You can go into your system admin custom attribute dictionary under identity, and you can hide these two fields so that your users do not get confused with that. So if you're not utilizing them for a local use, go in and hide date entered U.S. and date entered state school so that they only see the date entered U.S. on the screen.
And if you still see one called birth country, you can hide it as well. Birthplace is the one that we utilize, so don't get those confused. All right. Continuing on, the address level extract is back from a DOE perspective. So that is based on the households. The primary household for the student with the address marked as the physical address for the child will be the one that reports to DOE. If there's not a physical flag checked, then we'll look for a non-PO box address for that child to report. So as long as the student has an address associated that is not a PO box on a household that the student is a member of where there's a guardian present, it will report that as the address for the child. So that should not change your processes at all for your standard census information, but that is how we report the data for the child in there. If one is flagged as secondary, we do not report it. So if you have a split household situation, one of them is going to have to be a primary address. Any address or household membership that is flagged as secondary will not report. So if you have students who are getting errors that you're not getting a record in the address level extract, it is likely because they don't have one of those scenarios present on their household membership. All right, back under student, let's go ahead and jump over to enrollment. When we look at the enrollments tab for the kid, if you have any secondary enrollments or anything of the like, make sure you set the school override appropriately so we know where to report the data. If you have any scenarios where the kid has a gap in enrollment, we handle that in the enrollment extract for you. If you have a grade level change for a kid during the year, you need to break that line of enrollment by withdrawing them on the last day of their grade level and re-enrolling them the next day with the new grade level. Don't simply go in and change the grade on the kid. Actually create a break in the line of enrollment, or you will get downstream lasting effects in student class, in FTE, in student record, where we've reported a kid, we're not reporting grade levels appropriately. So again, if a kid changes grade level during the year, make sure you break that line of enrollment accordingly so that we can associate everything as necessary. Just going down the enrollment information for you here, end action is where we store our retention statuses. Now, in the new reality of life with COVID going on, we don't really know at this point in time on March 25th what the rest of the year is going to hold. But if you have a student who is deemed a retainee, you would flag it here on their 1920 line of enrollment because we have to report it for student record as a retention. Next year for October FTE, you will set it on the 2021 line of enrollment as a retainee, unless they graded up via summer school or whatever other scenario is pertinent. Again, we really don't know this year at this point, but that is where you set the retention status. So there is not a retained flag. It is end action, pick retained in there for appropriate reporting. Local start status, local end status, anybody that graduates, anybody that withdraws, make sure you set the local end status appropriately. There is a process in campus where you can graduate your kids and it will do this for you, set the diploma types, everything else that pertains, but these are the two fields that we utilize for reporting purpose. Future enrollment is primarily for campus purposes of rolling up to next year if there isn't a feeder school pattern. We're not going to talk about that for student record purposes any further than that. State reporting. If you check that first box that says state exclude, their line of enrollment on the enrollments tab will turn red and show you that it is a state excluded line of enrollment, but it also prevents them from going in ultimately all of our state reporting extracts. So don't check that unless you do not want to send a kid in any of the state reporting extracts. If they are an underage, this primarily pertains to FTE, But if you put them in kindergarten and flag them as underage, yes, we report that as the UK instead of the KK, and the U1 versus the O1. Migrant indicator, migrant yes or no. There is a continuation of service and a priority for service in there. So if you have a student who is a migrant priority for service, remember to set them here as a P. We will report them as yes for migrant and yes for priority service if they're set for P, priority for service. If they're simply set as yes, they will go as a yes for migrant, as a no for priority for service. So keep that in mind when you're setting those values. Homeless primary night shelter, remember the values somewhat changed. Here's your homeless indicator, yes, no. Homeless primary night shelter, those values are in there. I'm sorry, it's the Title I Environment Code that changed. Gifted service code, yeah, we'll get there in a second. Gifted service code, gifted referral, gifted eligibility, set those values as appropriate. The old special needs is now called student as a single parent. Set that as necessary for reporting. Pre-K program code, early intervention. Now let's talk about early intervention real quick here, because if you have a kid who is in a .1 class and early intervention services is set as a no, we don't respect the .1 for EIP segment weights for FTE. I know that we should be signing off on FTE now. Don't know when that'll happen. But just remember, if they're in an EIP course, make sure you set that. If they're in a remedial course, also set the REP, EIP subject area so that you can report that data appropriately. Resident district.
Also on those, remember, they do impact FTE. However, they are not supposed to come off. So if a student was ever EIP or remedial this year, leave these values set, because they do also go in student record. So that is, both of those are an if ever this year indicator.
Right, there is no exit date on that. If ever this school year, those values remain. All right, resident district, resident county, that is something Alicia mentioned earlier. You can go to System Admin Custom Attribute Dictionary. You can find these under enrollment and set a default value if you would like. So for instance, Madison County could set 695 in there for us. That keeps you from having to set every student. It will default it for you on new enrollment. Just remember to change those. If you have any resident status codes that are not in-county resident, choose the one that is appropriate. And remember, there is a new one, displaced due to a natural disaster. That is a new value to be set. In the past, I think we were using 2 for hurricane scenarios, flood scenarios. Now they've added a new 8. All right, that brings us to the alt school, alt system fields. Now keep in mind that there are several places that these fields exist. One is on the enrollment. If you set this student on the enrollment, every course that that student takes will get this information. If you set it on the school, which we should have shown you earlier when we were there, but if you set it on the school, every kid in that school will get that information. So that said, you don't have to go set each individual student. You can set it at a school level and we report it there. If it is only certain courses in that school, you can set it at the course level where we have alt school, alt system, and you may also set it at the section level. So whichever one pertains to your particular situation, set it accordingly. If you have different sections of the same course and not all of them get the same information, set it at the section level. If all sections of a course get the same information, set it at the course level. If all courses at a school get the same information, set it at the school level. If kids differ inside the same school, set it at the enrollment level. So wherever you choose to set it, you have the ability to do that for any of these scenarios in any of those locations.
And to clarify what alt school and alt system reports in, this is not your program level extract. Alt system and alt school is student class. So as Brock said, we can set it on section and course, that means it's going in student class with that course information to indicate that for that course or that section, this is where that student took that course. So don't get these confused with the program level data that we'll talk about where that comes from in a few minutes.
And the entry of data into these two fields does not in any way automatically populate the DOE program level data. As Alicia said, we'll get to that in a minute, but keep those two separate. They are not the same thing. All right, back under the enrollment, school override. If you have secondary or partial lines of enrollment, meaning a kid is going to a career academy or taking a class at another school, remember to set the school override so we know where to report data for this kid to DOE, especially if it's a program school, is this imperative. So if it's a program school where the school number set in campus is not in the DOE facilities list, set the school override here to their home school so that we know where to report that data from. Title I environment, this is a field that got some new values this year. All the names changed, but 6 and 7 were added, resides in a publicly funded or privately funded residential treatment center. So those values are there. We always get questions about immigrant reporting. Immigrant and migrant, two completely different things. There's a field on the screen right here called U.S. school less than 3 years. If that box is checked, that is something that we have to report to DOE, that's where immigrant data comes from, between that and the date entered U.S. schools. Now, date entered U.S. schools could have been 10 years ago, but if they have not fully served 3 years of school in the country, meaning they were here 2 years, left, and are just now coming back, even though they entered the country 10 years ago, U.S. school less than 3 years is going to be checked because they moved out, moved back in. Same scenario is true for EL monitor statuses, but keep in mind that anytime you hear immigrant, that is synonymous with U.S. schools less than 3 years. So that's your field for that. If they're 504, check the status box there. We don't report any of the additional 504 information below that anymore, so check 504 status, yes or no. All right, when we get down into the CCAE, CTI, SST, thanks for the highlight, Alicia. This is where those values are set. Just because a kid's on an RTI plan that you guys may consider SST, it does not automatically populate. Remember to go through and set the values here as necessary. All right, continuing down, Title III served. Any of your kids who are in the ESOL, are they served with supplemental funds? This is where that information is set, yes or no there. If you don't know the answer to it, somebody in your district does. I don't fully know exactly how that is qualified, but someone in your district would know. Dual language immersion, the DLI indicators, set it here, yes or no. If they are yes, then you have up to your 3 bilit language options. If we try to handle this for you in the state reporting extract, but you can't report bilit language 2 without reporting bilit language 1. So read this left to right, make sure you populate 1 before 2, 2 before 3, et cetera, et cetera. EOG.
Hang on just a second. To clarify something on the DLI, the dual language immersion, if a student is yes, there is also an indicator on the section for the student of what language that student participates in. So DLI can be any grade level. Bilit language 1, 2, and 3 are only for your graduating seniors, your 12th graders. But if a student is DLI, then you must go and set at least one section for that student to identify the language, the immersion language that that student is receiving. If you don't report a section with that, then you're also going to get an error.
All right, EOG, EOC, math, science, and ELA, those pertain to the pre-ID level extract. STEM participant is new this year for both school level and student level reporting. There are several options. There's a school-wide option. There is a participating option. I don't remember exactly what the options are, but we'll look at those in a minute. If this kid is one of those participants, you can check yes. If you are a school-wide option, you don't have to check this for your kid. We pick that up for you. But if you're not a school-wide option and this kid is a STEAM participant, this is where you set that information. 21st century served. Was this kid served in a 21st century after-school program? Yes or no? Category of WBO program, that pertains to the student class extract. What is it, student class? Good question. That pertains to which program, category of WBO program the student is in. You can also set that at the course level as necessary, or you can set it at the student level. For FTE this year, we went through this in our fall update. We did add a prior 10 days override. There were some situations where we were calculating or a yes or a no based on the kid's attendance, and districts needed to report something different. So that gives you the ability to do that. All right, special ed fields. If you are using the campus IEP, many of these fields can auto-populate. If you utilize the Go IEP import for FTE, these fields also populate from Go IEP. Now, one thing to clarify here, that is, if just like EIP earlier, if a kid was ever special ed through the year, at any point in time through the year, even if they exited the 17th day of August after school had started, you leave the area of exceptionality set for the kid. Do not remove it, because we have to report that accordingly in the necessary extracts. Their status can go to a no, but their area of exceptionality must remain during the year if they were served at any point in time. Special ed environment, set that there. Special ed exit date and special ed exit reason, again, populate these as necessary, be it an 09 or a 10 record. Area served pertains to the students for FTE purposes where they are a 6, 7, or 8 primary. That's the environmental issue. Whether they're autistic, TBI, or SDD, those are not valid program codes for special ed. 6 and 7 are for move on and ready scenarios, dual enrollment, whatever it's called these days. The area served would replace that as necessary. If you have an ESY kid, there's your extended year flag. Service plan. If you check service plan, it has significant impacts on FTE. We ultimately owe out all the segments for the kids, and Alicia, correct me here, we don't report them in student record. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So if they're a service plan kid, we report them for FTE. We don't report them for student record. We owe out all the segments. All right, continuing over. Alicia, if you will, go to sysadmin calendar and let's look at the days and explain the change that we're making. Sysadmin calendar for the school that you have selected up until approximately 8:30 a.m. this morning, when we were doing the membership days for the enrollment level extract, we were utilizing the instruction flag in the middle. Because of COVID, we changed it. There are impacts in campus that Alicia's about to explain to you when instruction and attendance are checked. So we have changed it to be school day. If school day is checked, that is what we utilize to determine membership days for the students. We no longer utilize instruction days. Alicia, do you want to explain why?
Yes. During this time, we've received a lot of questions and things that we're trying to do in campus, or that y'all are trying to do in campus, so that teachers can either continue to put in assignments and take attendance, or you want to eliminate the ability for a teacher to enter attendance. So what you can do, there are two different scenarios going on. For virtual learning days, if you want those days to still stay available so that teachers can communicate with students, they can enter assignments, but you do not want them to have access to any attendance, and you also want to delete any attendance that was forward entered before we close schools. You can uncheck instruction and uncheck attendance. When you click save and you do that, it is going to warn you that you are about to delete any attendance that had been entered on this day. So if you truly want to clear it, because many of you have gone ahead and put in like ISS days or OSS days, and you are just forgiving those for students, you can uncheck this. It clears that, and just leave school day checked. We will still calculate it for your enrollment days. The other option that campus is about to make available is the ability for your teachers to enter attendance on an assignment for students. If you haven't gone to Campus Community and looked at the update that has been posted about the COVID-19 attendance option, you may want to go check that out. That will give you a way to allow your teachers to go in, collect attendance for students on a daily assignment that will be automatically created for them. They will not have to do anything additional. It will kind of explain it. There's a little webinar out there that you can go and watch, and we will also be able to answer more of your questions. If you are interested, you can put in a support ticket for that. That will require that these stay checked. So if you plan on using that new COVID attendance option, you don't want to go in and make any modifications to your day settings. So that would only be if you totally want to take away any attendance that is there during virtual learning days and remove the ability for anyone to enter attendance on those days. So there'll be more information coming, or again, if you're interested in that COVID option, drop us a support ticket. We can get you your questions answered.
But again, in respect to that, we have modified our enrollment membership days, present days calculation to utilize the school day checkbox instead of instruction that it was doing earlier. So as Alicia just explained, lots of information on community. We will be sending out further communication about it, as will Infinite Campus Corporate, but these two checkboxes no longer matter for our enrollment level extract when it comes to our calculation. So school day is the primary indicator. All right, Alicia, if you will, go back to Lex. All right, so we've talked about all the enrollment level information. Let's just continue over the tabs here. Some of this is not exactly in the correct order, but the schedule tab, remember the schedule tab is what controls everything for student class. Now, in this oddly weird, strange, unknown place that we are, we have made some changes to student class successfully to fix E5099 errors where you had situations that said class end date before class start date. Anytime you had a frequent flyer, and I need to preface this with, I still encourage you to enter start and end dates on any roster when a kid changes. So for instance, if Alicia goes to change Lexi's schedule here, and we click on one, up at the top, we will see a start date and an end date. If you change a kid's schedule, I encourage you to enter both of those. That recommendation had not been listened to very well, had not been adhered to for many districts. So we made a change to student class effective yesterday and rolled it out to everybody, that we now look at the enrollments to try to find the enrollment that starts before the term or the start date on the class or the end date on the class to appropriately report the dates for student class. It seems to have corrected issues for several different districts who were not using the start date and end date. Again, I still recommend that you do it so that you know and you can easily see the date ranges in campus and you can ad hoc those dates. But for student class, we have made a change to hopefully assist with that. But if you're getting any E5099 errors, this is the first place to go check for student class. Directly here on the walk-in scheduler for the kid, check that start and end date. So again, here's the student schedule. We did have some situations of an E1687, I believe was the error, that said student not reported in FTE, but classes reported in student class. Yes, that is the scenario. What we found is on the transcript, if you are manually entering any transcript records and you had entered the term start and end dates for the class that were outside the kid's line of enrollment. So let's say they were an early grad and they graduated in December, but you had manually entered a transcript record that say ended in February. That was throwing a student class error because we were saying, hey, this kid should have been reported in FTE. We don't report withdrawals or graduates in FTE 3 in the March FTE count. We only report those in October. So this is where it originated from. Those term start and end dates cannot be outside the kid's line of enrollment, or it will cause you DOE errors for student class. Should only happen for manual entered records, but just keep that in mind if you have any of those scenarios, where to go check for that. Now, while we're still talking about student class, remember the way we pull scores for student class. If a kid is on a roster for a class that doesn't have a corresponding transcript entry, we're going to report a Z score. If you want to report the incomplete, the I score, or any other numeric or alpha score for the kid, there has to be a corresponding entry for the student on the transcript. We recommend strongly, heavily, that you post to transcripts instead of manual entry anytime you can, especially situations where a kid is scheduled to a class. So if you are scheduling dual enrollment and manually entering to the transcript, we would recommend that on the student schedule where you have the kid scheduled, create a grading task on that dual enrollment course and post everything over to the transcript just like you do on any regular course, instead of simply manually entering to the transcript. That keeps everything very fluid, everything going for student class reporting, just like you would for your traditional courses. If you do have scenarios where you're manually entering, please make sure that all of your PSO, your post-secondary, your dual enrollment, you either create a person for those with the social security number being 77000, whatever the 4-digit school code is, so that we can appropriately report the alt system, alt school for those classes. If you don't have that person created, again, I recommend you create them so that if something does change on the school number, you simply have to change it in one place and you pick it from the list. But you can enter it in the primary teacher override. Anytime that the course has a 4 in the 7th or 8th digit, help me, Alicia, 8th digit, and the primary teacher starts with 770, we report it. There was documentation issue with DOE that said you could use 770 or 777. Any of you that were using 777 are now getting an error. That's a DOE thing. It's got to be 770. So again, 77 in this situation, had Alicia entered, well, she chose Athens Area Tech PSO, so we pull the social off of that teacher. If you enter a primary teacher override, we pull the left 3 digits, so 770 is the alt system, and the right 4 digits, 6543, as the alt school number. So if you have a manual entry situation where you don't have a primary teacher created that you could pick from the list, and you need to report the alt system, alt school for your DE classes, left 3 is going to be the alt system, right 4 is going to be the alt school, and that entire 9-digit string is going to go as the primary teacher. So keep that in mind when you're doing this. Again, repeat one more time. I recommend you create a person in campus that you can pick from the primary teacher list. On that person record, their social security number would be 77000, whatever the 4-digit school code is. So in this situation that Alicia's showing you, 6543. If you create that, you do not have to do the primary teacher override. You simply pick them from the list. If for some reason it's a one-off rare situation and you want to enter the primary teacher override, you can do that. Another thing that we changed this year for student class, we no longer report the all 8s, all 9s, which are the in-state and out-of-state transfers. If they're an in-state, they're being reported from wherever they transferred from. If they're an out-of-state, don't matter anyway. We don't have to report those to student class. So we have pulled those out of the extract effective this March reporting cycle. So that is a new thing that we have done as well.
Yep. If you are unsure of what the 4-digit institution code is supposed to be for your technical schools or your your University of Georgia system schools, at the very end of the student class data element detail, not the layout, but the data element detail, there's a list of all of those acceptable institution codes that you can use. So the 77000, and then you can get a list of those 4 so that you can create a teacher for each of those possible options.
Now, other things, Alicia, if you will scroll down for me, other things that pertains to student class reporting, all of the ESOL delivery model, EIP delivery model, special ed delivery model. If you're manually entering a record, be mindful of that. If you're posting, we get all that information from the section. So keep that in mind. This information will post for you as it comes over, which furthers my statement that we encourage you to post anytime you schedule. So if a course is on a kid's schedule, post it from there. Don't manually enter it to the transcript. Please, thank you. Kind regards. Life will be easier as you know it. All right, let's go ahead and, well, student safety level reporting. Alicia, just going left to right here. On the behavior tab, we only report completed events, so remember that they have to be completed. In addition to that, on your behavior level codes, so if you go to sysadmin behavior.
Actually, that's under behavior admin.
Oh, it's not sysadmin. Okay, behavior admin, event types and resolution types. Remember in the scenario she's got here, we have a school selected at the top. We encourage all of you to use district level codes. Don't have to, but just remember where they're set. Click on any one of these. Remember to set your category, level 1, level 2, level 3, as well as your state event code mapping. If you don't have a state event code mapping and it has a state resolution code, those are going to go as the 24 others. We can't report 2480 combos, which are other. So just keep that in mind. This is where you set it for the state event code. And as mentioned on the school level earlier, this is the federal event code or USCO event code set there. For any of you that have the situation where you need to set up the new state event codes, I believe they're 41 and 42 maybe, Alicia. We did not automatically create those codes for you. It's 42 and 44. We entered them in the state event code mapping. So you would still have to create your own local codes to associate to these, but the new values are available for you there in the state event code drop list. Same thing is true on resolution codes. You can go through and check those resolution codes. There is a state resolution code field for you there. So keep that in mind as you are reporting. Other than that, the only thing to remember, we only report completed events. So if an event is still in draft status or not completed, we will not report that event. All right, let's go ahead and drop over to the DOE alternative program data. So for the program level extract for student record, this is where our data comes from. Again, if a student is in a program school, if a student has any of the scenarios where they need to report program level data, this is where it pulls from. Based on that status date that we see there, we get the school code, the program type, the program code, end date, alt school number, alt system code, and if it is a GNET scenario, the number of daily GNET segments, there at the bottom. The time does not matter. If you need to enter multiple records for the same student, you cannot enter more than one on the same date with the same time. So just choose different times in there. It will default for you to the current date and time if you click New Status at the top. So DOE alternative program data, everything for the program level extract comes from here. As another gentle reminder, just because a student is enrolled or has alt system, alt school information set on the enrollment tab, we do not automatically create for you any records on the DOE alternative program data. They are completely different. All right, anything else under student info? Yeah, let's talk about the graduation tab, Alicia. So graduation tab, something that changed fairly significant this year, is the way that we report the, oh gosh, drawing a blank, diploma seals. In the past, there was one list under a grad program that showed you all the possible combinations. This year, you pick each individual diploma seal that a student gets, and they go individually as individual fields on the student. So if a student is in more than one diploma seal category, go through and check them all as necessary. In the method, you're going to see a, click the method for me there. You're going to see a distinguished and other, what does the other one say? I can't see it because of my, whatever. All right, so make sure you check the kid. If they have the diploma seal with a date earned, we will report them accordingly. If they're one of the CTAEs and they get the distinguished value, you have that set there for you to select as well. The distinguished value is not valid on some of the others, so we simply translate the distinguished to a yes if you happen to pick distinguished on a diploma seal that is not valid to report distinguished to DOE. So keep that in mind, add all the ones that are necessary. We did run a conversion routine to start with to try to populate those out for you, and we deactivated all the originals out of the grad program drop list. Diploma type and diploma date, even though we have a in status and end date on the enrollment, diploma type and diploma date still have to be set. There is an enrollment in batch wizard in campus that you can run to set those for students by default. Alicia, do you want to walk them through that real quick?
Sure. If you go under System Administration to Student, there is an enrollment in batch, as Brock mentioned. Here, you can go through when you are end dating specifically your graduates. So you would select your high school or school. You will enter that end date, the graduation status of a G, and also you can mass set the diploma information. So our recommendation typically is to utilize this tool to set the masses, and then you can go in and then modify that for those students that it may differ for. If you do have another identifier based on maybe their academic plan that they're assigned to, you can incorporate that into an ad hoc filter and filter those students to set that graduation appropriately. There is also, if you are utilizing the academic plan, there is also a tool under Program Admin, the course plan admin tool, that will allow you to set that graduation status based on the graduation status that is set on your academic plan. So the post diplomas, if you are setting your plans so that they do have a specific diploma type on them and you are accurately assigning those plans to students, then you can use that without even having to do the ad hoc. And it will update that diploma information for you based on that academic plan. So two different options there. If you have questions about utilizing this course plan admin tool to post diplomas and you're unsure of whether or not you have that set correctly or not, drop us a ticket, or if Jeannie or Carol have done any, Jeannie Ponder or Carol Jones have done any training with your district, they can also help answer those questions for you.
All right, before we jump over to special ed, Alicia, stay under program admin and let's talk about EL. So EL information that we have to report, program admin, English learners. When we expand out English learners here for any of those kids that, student information, program participation.
Yes, wrong location.
Sorry, my bad. English learners. Any students that fall into this category, we have, you set the program status to EL. If they're exited, we automatically calculate for you the monitor year values based on the exit date. But anytime that you need to do any overrides, remember on the EL services, you can go through and set services for the kid. That would be ESOL. Remember the itinerant, non-itinerant is gone now, so it's just ESOL 1, ESOL 2. As we see down there, you have all your non-ESOL services. Any of those that say override there in the middle, ESOL M1, O, M2, F, et cetera, that if you use an override, so if you're manually setting an override, our calculation no longer matters. So you're going to have to keep up with this kid now went from year 2 to year 3 on monitor, whatever the case may be there. We do not auto increment anything that's been overridden. This would be a scenario, like mentioned earlier with the U.S. school less than 3 years, if they leave the country during a monitoring scenario, when they return, if they were in year 2 when they left, they're still in year 2 when they get back, even if it's 7 years later. That's when you would go through and set the overrides. That's what this is designed for. So keep that in mind in those special situations when necessary. Start date. For instance, if the kid is ESOL, you can enter a start date of whatever date they were deemed accordingly. Leave the end date open. We will report it until such time as they're exited. And if that exit happens in that year, obviously we handle the appropriate reporting as necessary during that particular fiscal year. Anything to add there?
And remember, when you say fiscal year, anything that is reported between July 1st and June 30th is considered as being served this year. So if you exit a student that was not served at all during the 1920 school year, be sure you end date those as 6/30 of 2019. So if you have your schools going in and exiting folks and they exited those on 7/1, but they truly were not served, we're going to report them as being served. So DOE considers 7/1 of the year to 6/30 of the year as being served. So just carefully make sure schools understand how to set those dates, or instruct them to use the first day of school and the last day of school, and then it falls within that range and you're not having to worry about it.
All right. Anything else, Alicia? Okay, let's go ahead and jump to special ed then. So again, if you're a Go IEP district, we recommend that you report special ed from Go IEP. If you are a campus district, there is a process on your task scheduler called Update Special Ed SR Event Dates from IEP. Run that as often as you need to. It will populate over. At some point in time, be it the 10th of June, be it the 1st of June, be it the 15th of June, you're going to want to turn this off so that you can make manual updates. Otherwise, this process continues to run and it will always win. So this district that we're on has it set to run at 8 p.m., but has it stopped currently? So it's not running. Make sure to turn it on to run up through the point in time that you want to start making manual updates to the special ed SR event dates. If you do not have this turned on and you're using campus IEPs, you are not reporting to DOE current data out of your IEPs unless you're manually entering that data, redundantly entering that data over to the special ed SR event dates tab. So friendly reminder, turn that on, turn that off when necessary. Student info, special ed general, there is a couple of tabs we'll look at. Special ed SR event dates. If you import from Go IEP, the Go IEP SR import tool will populate all the values that come in from Go onto this tab. If you utilize our IEPs and that process is running on your task scheduler, it will populate the values on this tab. Now, some of these, like the second re-eligibility termination, the second IEP annual review, anytime more than one happens in the same fiscal year, we only populate the first one. So if you have those scenarios, you do manually enter the second item onto this tab. This controls everything that we report for student record special ed level reporting. That's why I say at some point in time, you will want to turn off the updater closer to student record sign off so that you can go to this tab, make any updates, especially after your teachers check out and you're not modifying IEPs. Turn it off. You can make your edits here. Just make sure you keep a note so that the IEPs do get updated subsequently to the same information you reported to DOE.
We have added at the bottom the 2 new event codes for this year, Event 14 and Event 15. If you're using our campus special ed, these 2 dates are not going to report from any field in an IEP or an eligibility this year. There is some changes that many of you saw at Interchange that's coming to a new version of the special ed IEP. We will start collecting it from that document at that time. But for this state reporting cycle, the event 14 and 15s will need to be manually entered. I know 15 is rather rare. 14 is definitely something that we're going to need to just get populated manually. That will not overwrite because we're not pulling it from anywhere. So even if you have your process going, Brock, am I correct? They're safe to enter that?
Correct.
Will that get wiped? That will not get wiped out.
It will not.
Correct. Okay. So you can go ahead and enter those. The process nightly will update all of your other fields on your locked IEPs. So just make sure your folks know that these 2 are going to have to be manually maintained for this cycle.
And for those of you watching the webinar, Alicia, click general for me again, or just summary, that's fine. Go back to the special ed SR event dates. If it doesn't look just like this, meaning if it looks like the DOE alternative program where you can have more than one, that is why your data is not reporting correctly. Don't change this from a single screen editor to a table editor. Leave this as a single screen editor. That's how it was designed. That's how it reports. So don't modify this tab, please, and your data will report correctly. Special education and related services, those are fields that get populated from our IEPs as well, and also import from Go IEP. This pertains to FTE data to report. So I'm hoping many of you are nearing the point of FTE completion, although it's been expanded till an unknown time at this point. Special ed related services and FTE minutes served are data that pertain to FTE. Now there is a new tab called State Reporting that you see under Special Ed. This is for your GAA level information. This does import from Go IEP. This does populate via the task scheduler from our IEPs, or if you need to manually enter any kids, this is where GAA now reports from. Simply enter a start date, an end date, and a yes in there if the kid needs to be GAA. We respect the dates just like we do for everything else. If it happened inside this fiscal year, we report it accordingly for GAA. It is a if it happened scenario again. So set your start date either prior to or during this year. Make sure the end date is prior to the end of the fiscal year. If the kid exits, we now have to report date student. I don't remember what the right wording is, but basically when the student was deemed GAA, when the student was deemed not GAA. We have to report those to DOE now. Those are the 2 fields we utilize for that. If a kid does exit the GAA program, you don't have to change the status to a no. Simply enter the end date in there. And if you have a kid that needs to report GAA no, you don't even have to create a record. So it's only for kids that are GAA yes. Does this matter? All right. Last couple of things that I want to discuss is the auto upload to DOE. Alicia, anything you want to add for special ed? No?
No, that does it.
All right, so we've covered student enrollment, program, special ed, address, system, and school. I believe that is all of them, and we also covered student class in this process. Oh, safety, we even covered it. So all that information is there. System course level, for those of you that see that, no longer used, that's gone. So don't even worry with that one if it's still in your outline. DOE career data, remember that was removed from student record reporting. That goes solely from Counselor Companion now. So we don't have any DOE career data going from student record any longer. All right, the next thing under Georgia State reporting, all of you have something called the GADOE Auto FTP settings. This controls your nightly extract to DOE. You have student class and you have state extract, which we need to rename to student record. Choose all your extracts. Notice in here you don't see school. Notice in here you don't see system. Remember I told you earlier, those do not go in the nightly auto feed. When you choose this, it is based on which calendars you have selected and at the point in time where you're ready to stop the auto feed. So when you're getting down to a comment phase at DOE, disable the package. Package enabled no, so that we no longer send that at night. As long as it says yes, we are going to process the data automatically to DOE on the scheduler each night. So you can set this up. Each of these has its own selection. So just because you set up enrollment level doesn't mean program level is going to go. So make sure you select all of the calendars and package enabled yes or no for every extract, not just once. Each one is controlled separately. Under student class, the only other thing that I want to remind you of here is pick your calendars, pick your grade levels. Down at the bottom, there is an option that also impacts the manual extract as well as your etch refreshes. Send classes that start before. At this point in the year, you need to make that the last day of school or June 30th, whatever date you want to there, because we need to be sending every class. When we start school next year, you can set that to be October, December, whatever date you want, so that students don't see their second semester classes via SLDS if you don't want them to yet. You don't have to send future classes that have not yet begun if you don't want to. So that's why we say send classes that start before and allow you to enter a date. On the manual extract screen, you do not see this field. On the etch refresh screen, you do not see this field. It is all controlled based on this GADOE Auto FTP settings, student class FTP settings. That controls the setting for all other student class reporting. One other thing I see on the screen, we're getting to that point in time in the year, copy scores to embedded courses. Remember, we do have the embedded course process for you. On any given root course, you can set the embedded course number. You do have to add that course to the kid's schedule, and it does have to have a grading task that receives credit. We then take, via this process, we take the score from whatever the root course was, copy it to the course on the kid's schedule with that embedded course number. As long as there is a grading task on both courses that is set to post to the transcript with a credit type, we will copy from the root course to the embedded course for you there. We've seen folks use this creatively with things outside of the embedded course process. Perfectly fine. It works the same way. But if you have an embedded course number entered here and you run our copy scores to embedded courses, it looks on the kid's schedule for whatever course that is that has a grading task set to post a transcript, and it will copy the course from this root course, AP Calculus, to whatever the embedded course happens to be. So bear that in mind as you are working through that information. All right. In summary, to wrap things up here, On campus community, which appears that Alicia might be opening for us here. On campus community, if you will go to forums, there is a Georgia specific forum on there. In the Georgia specific forum, we post all sorts of notifications. There's also a state reporting forum direct in there. There has been lots of good use this year, folks asking questions back and forth of how are you handling this scenario, that scenario. Our team frequently answers, as well as folks just asking opinions on how do you handle this, how do you handle that. So utilize these forums. This is where our documentation is posted for you as well. So notice there at the top, we have those pinned or sticky for you so that you can see all of those. And this webinar will also be posted out there for your review. Feel free to share this with anybody that has community access. Feel free to use this as your internal documentation. All of our documentation has been updated to 2020 specs. We've tried to put new logos, new screenshots, all that stuff in there for you. We're continually updating that information as best we can.
One thing I would recommend to everyone is go to the forum. You'll see the sub forums. Out to the side of state reporting, there is a subscribe. So anytime, if you subscribe here, anytime we update anything within this area, you will get a notification. We're going to start just an FAQ or a Q&A type list as we get questions and we can clarify things for everybody. So, you can add, as Brock said, you can ask questions there. We'll do our best to respond. Some of you have been adding questions to one another of how you do things with your district and some ideas. That's great. That is what this is for. But the subscribe will be very helpful. You can subscribe to each one. Also, if you go straight to the state specific information here, you can subscribe to everything Georgia related. You can subscribe at multiple levels. If you see that you're getting too many emails and too many updates, you can definitely go in and unsubscribe. But that way you'll be sure that you don't miss out on anything that we post.
We hope you found this webinar handy. Sorry we didn't do a live webinar this morning, but the new reality we're in didn't really warrant the opportunity for us to do that. If you need anything from us, if there's any question you have, if you're trying to utilize campus learning newly in our remote learning scenario, if there's anything, any idea you want to bounce off of us, any question, just please remember we're here. We are fully staffed. Everybody is remote. We're down to skeleton staff in the office, but our phones still work. Salesforce tickets still work. Community is still here. Just remember that we're here for you to help with anything that we can. If you think it's a dumb question, it's only dumb if you don't ask it. Please ask. We want to help. We hope everybody is staying healthy through this process, and more than anything, just remember that we're all in this together, and we'll get through it as a family. So thank y'all for everything. If you have any questions, drop us tickets, and we'll talk to you soon. Stay healthy.